Hey Disney cruisers, and welcome back to the DCL community, where we are here to help you plan, prepare for, and get excited for your Disney cruise. You guys know me, I'm Rebecca, your host and admin of the DCL community. And today we are focusing on Florida's two home ports for Disney Cruise Line. Because as this cruise line continues to grow and Disney continues to add more and more itineraries out of Florida, a lot of questions are coming in on how to kind of best maximize your time there, whether you want to go to the parks or you want to do back-to-backs from the different ports. So I'm so excited to be getting into this topic today. If you're coming in, please say hello. Let us know where you're watching from so that we can say hi. But Stacey, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, my name is Stacey Johnston from Marvelous Mouse Travels. I've been a travel agent for 5 years now and am one of the top selling agents for Marvelous Mouse Travels, and I'm considered a platinum planner. So I love doing this. I love experiencing, having my clients experience these travels, and I just live vicariously through them. I've been fortunate enough to have cruised with Disney loads of time. I've been on every cruise, every ship, and most of their major itineraries. So excited to share with you my experience. I just recently moved from Florida. So having been a Florida resident, the two Florida ports seem like my home base. So getting between them has been something that I've had to navigate now for a little while, and happy to share my experiences.
I know. And I feel like there's such a misconception that, Orlando, Walt Disney World, Port Canaveral, Fort Lauderdale, they're all so close to each other. It's all Florida. But people forget how spread out and how long of a state Florida is. So I am excited to get into this one because so many people are asking about it. If you have any questions as we're going through, put them in the comments and we're going to do our best to get to all of them. But if you are ready to start planning your Disney cruise vacation, reach out to Stacey. She knows these ships and these itineraries and all the onboard experiences and excursions like the back of her hand. And if you didn't know, her planning services are actually free for you to utilize. So she is here to help. Some friends coming in from Maryland for Disney cruise in November. Oh, that's so exciting, out of Fort Lauderdale. I know some questions are coming in on, is Fort Lauderdale a better port? So we'll have to address that one too. But let's go ahead and dive into why we're talking about this.
Yeah. So once Disney announced that they were moving into Port Everglades, I was really excited. I really like the Fort Lauderdale experience. The cruise port is very close to the airport. We're talking 15 minutes. And so that's really nice. And they have some really great hotels there in the Fort Lauderdale area for your pre-night stays and for you to really get to experience Fort Lauderdale. There's a lot of really cool things around there that, I can help you plan. There's something called Lion Country, which is the coolest. It's like this drive-through safari. It's not too far from Fort Lauderdale. You definitely want to rent a car for that one, but it's very cool. So I was really excited when this opened up. And what we have, we get a lot of clients, myself and the other agents within Marvelous Mouse Travels, is how do I get between these two? And I book a lot of kind of the land and sea adventures. I'd say over half of my cruisers go experience Disney for at least 1 or 2 nights prior to their cruise, or sometimes after their cruise. And so a lot of people want to combine that Walt Disney World experience. And by the way, Epic Universe is going live in 2 days, and we do book Universal Studios Epic Universe. And so a lot of people are wanting to combine these the Disney or Universal Studios as part of a cruise experience. And then we also get, I book a lot of the back-to-back cruises. And so I guess some people call these side-to-side, where it's not truly back-to-back. It's not on the same ship, but it's going to be on a cruise out of Port Canaveral and then one in Port Everglades, or we may, reverse that. So, and by the way, you can also explore 2 cruise lines. So let's say you're sailing on the Magic and then you want to go on the Utopia. We could do that for you as well too. So this would be a great way for you to really explore different cruise itineraries, different cruise lines, different ports of Florida. And so having the availability of you being able to get between Port Canaveral and Fort Lauderdale, it's just important to know that there are options out there. Don't let that distance scare you away. But to your point earlier, it's actually not as close as some people think. In fact, it's closer from Fort Lauderdale to Miami And so a lot of people might fly into Miami and then take an Uber even all the way up to the Port Everglades. So that is an option as well too when we're looking at flights.
Awesome. That is so good to know. And I know you've made the point before when you're looking at vacations, as a mom of three, having a vacation that kind of checks a box for each one of your kids and for you and for your husband. I love the idea of doing a back-to-back on two different cruise lines and getting to experience something new together that maybe checks a box for somebody else in the family. Maybe not everybody, and this is hard to believe, but maybe not everybody is a Disney person like we are. So it's fun to experience something else together. So I love that idea.
Yeah. And so some of the scenarios that I book are, as I mentioned, starting or ending in Walt Disney World. That's my most common. And most commonly, people start in Walt Disney World and then end with a cruise. That's my preferred way, just because Walt Disney World is one of those places that, at least if you go like my family goes, you need a vacation from your vacation. And so,
Yes.
the go, the rope drop to the, staying out till park close. And so with doing that, I usually say, hey, how do you like to experience Walt Disney World or Universal Studios? And if it's like we do, then I usually say, let's start with the parks first and then end with a cruise, so you can end on a relaxing note. And so right now, because there are so many great itineraries out of Fort Lauderdale, I book this a lot, where it's, okay, let's do some park time and then let's get down to Fort Lauderdale. Also, as mentioned previously, you might want to cruise from Port Canaveral and then followed by a second cruise from Fort Lauderdale. It is possible to do them the same day, so I don't want to shy you away, but it would have to be precise timing. And, we would have to get you walking off the ship with your luggage. And so there's just some things to consider. So some of my clients are saying, that sounds like a nightmare to me. That's more stressful than I'd want it to be. But some are like, yep, I'm ready to go. Let's do it. So it is possible to do a cruise that's ending on the same day as your next cruise. And then some guests may fly into Orlando or Miami in order to cruise out of Fort Lauderdale for the pricing, or maybe a direct flight for whatever, each client has their own needs. Maybe you have a conference in Orlando that you are going to, and then you want to go end with a cruise afterwards. So there's multiple reasons why you might be starting out in Orlando, ending up in Fort Lauderdale, or vice versa.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's so many ways to mix and match all of these, and there's no wrong or right way to do it. Right? It's about what works best for your family. Somebody's saying that they love ending at Disney Springs, and I know nothing about Disney Springs, but I know I'm kind of in the camp of do all the walking and everything for. But I guess, is Disney Springs relaxing? Is that something? I
Disney
know nothing.
Springs is well, and now that's called Downtown Disney, but it's
Oh,
basically it's essentially the area where there's the shops and the
oh,
restaurants, and so it's a touch of Disney. So the World of Disney is this major store that you could honestly spend hours in the World of Disney. And then they have different stores as well, like an H&M and those type of things, a million restaurants. We like to go to the restaurants there. The Boathouse is one of our favorites.
oh.
My kids love the TRX restaurant. Of course, Rainforest Cafe is there. So just a ton of restaurants, shopping. Ghirardelli chocolate ice cream is so good. They have the best sundaes. So it's really it's this wonderful kind of shopping experience. So some people, if you're flying further across the country, might choose a later flight. Sometimes those red-eye flights are being offered. And so if you've got a late flight, I'd say, hey, let's definitely get you there. And then if we, and then if we also do, but some people want to do, hey, just after a cruise, I just want to get home. I'm going straight to the airport. So that being said, it really kind of depends on your itinerary. Some people, we do the Disney Springs before their cruise. So let's say they just want to fly in for the night early, and they don't want to do a park ticket. So let's talk about what activities there are to do there. But they like staying in the Disney Springs area, so they do. We've got several resort options there as well too. The Drury Resort, I have a lot of people that stay there. It's relatively new, it's clean, it's not very expensive, it's got free breakfast. And so booking that, and then we book private transportation from there to the ports as well too. So that lots of options.
Love that. And where was the question? Jackie's asking, is it good to book flights through Disney, or would you not recommend?
So I have found that their flight prices are not as competitive as sometimes what I can get for my clients. So I usually will call Disney and say, hey, what kind of flight options do you have? And then I will usually try to find some bundles, so to speak. It depends, especially on where you're staying. So I can usually bundle a flight in a hotel and get it at a cheaper, less expensive option for my clients. So I book a lot of flight and hotel packages for my cruise clients.
Awesome. Good to know. And keep the questions coming, guys. This is one from Robert. Are the Wish and Treasure the same layouts? Yes, they are. They are sister ships, and so will the Destiny.
Yes.
But let's talk about transfer options. A few people have been asking about, does a Disney bus go between? Does Disney do transfers between? So this slide is a perfect timing.
Yeah. So unfortunately, as of right now, if you were to fly into or stay at Walt Disney World and then sail out of Fort Lauderdale, they're not offering those direct transfers at this point in time through Disney Cruise Line. But I'm definitely hoping that will be an option. I think I've heard that might be coming, so we'll keep our eye on it. So right now, there are two main options. One is, we have three, two that my clients tend to choose the most. One is a rental car. And so you can rent a car from, there's a rental car service right there in Walt Disney World. And then, of course, there's a rental car service in the Orlando airport. And there's a rental car service at the Port Canaveral cruise port. So love the fact that it's totally flexible. You can get the size car that you need for this amount of luggage that you have. The cons is sometimes there's a one-way drop-off fee. I have found that between these ports, the drop-off fee isn't very much. So I don't want that to prohibit you from booking this. Parking, if you decide to keep the car for the duration of the cruise, you're going to have to pay for our parking. Most of my clients will then drop off the rental car at the Fort Lauderdale airport and then take an Uber there. Again, it's just a 15-minute drive. So it's not a very expensive Uber, like $20. So a lot of people do that. And so if you're going to do, if you want to do a back-to-back and you are doing it the same day, I'd probably recommend this being your option, just because, it's right there at the port. I will tell you, though, it does take a minute to get the rental cars from Port Canaveral. It's a smaller rental car company, smaller space. So I am National, the Emerald Isle, which is where you just walk up, you get in a car, and then you drive off the lot type of thing. And so they don't really have that type of experience. So the last time I did rent a car there from start to finish, from the time I was being picked up from the, waiting for the shuttle to driving off the lot, was almost an hour. So just to build that into your consideration.
Yes, that is such a good point. And I know you have parking challenges here as well. And Allie's asking, is it easy to park at the port? I'm not sure which one we're talking about, but just in general.
Yeah, both ports I have found to be pretty easy to park at. In general, Fort Lauderdale traffic's pretty much a nightmare, especially the closer you get to Fort Lauderdale and then into Miami. And so, but once you get off towards the ports, the parking I didn't feel was too bad. Now, you do want to arrive at your port arrival time, and that will help, modulate how many people are coming in. So that's why we have those port arrival times, is so that you can, arrive when you're supposed to be parking and dropping off your luggage. So taking that into consideration, I find, at least at the Port Canaveral, it is super easy to park. And I didn't find the Fort Lauderdale experience to be too difficult either.
Yeah, and for those who don't know, the parking decks are right there. So it's not like you're having to park miles away and schlep all the suitcases back. And oh, but speaking of, I know someone is going to ask, do I drop off the rental car first or drop off my family first, or what do I do with the luggage? So can you explain how that works at the
Yeah.
ports typically?
So the way I would do it, honestly, I mean, Fort Lauderdale is so close. You could definitely drop off your luggage and your family and then go drop it off, but they'd be waiting for about 30 minutes. I probably would just drop off the car and then get an Uber XL that's big enough to take us and our luggage. That's personally how I would do it myself. But if you have, say, like elderly parents that are, I think you saw a picture, a post that I did on the DCL community. My dad's been using a walker and a wheelchair the last couple of cruises with him. And
Yeah.
so in that instance, I might actually just go ahead and drop him off and my mom, because I think that would be easier for them, even if we have to wait a little bit longer for me to return. Now that's not really an option with Port Canaveral, because like, I guess I was thinking MCO, but yes, I still would probably drop off the rental car if at all possible. And then with Port Canaveral, they have shuttles to the rental car facility as well too. So that's nice.
Good to know. Thank you for answering all these questions. I know this option is coming up more and more. And as a city gal, I love the idea of public transportation, but let's talk through the pros and cons of Brightline.
Okay, so Brightline, I love, and my first experience with Brightline, I was like, "This is awesome." It's very sleek feeling. It's very modern, very clean. I did the kind of the concierge, the deluxe level, so you get access to like this lounge for prior to boarding, and they have beer and wine, I think, and cokes and snacks. And so you can sit there while you're waiting to board. And the difference between a train and, say, a plane is you do have to go through security, but it's very short. It's like, a quick security line. And you don't have to arrive a full hour, 2 hours ahead of time. You do recommend about 30 to 40 minutes ahead of time. So you will want to come and arrive a little earlier, but it's very clean and it's nice having access to the lounge. But if you decide not to do the lounge, there is a food court not too far at the Orlando airport. So you can go get your food and you bring it inside. So it's not like where the you have to dump your drinks 3 ounces. It's a little, the security is a little bit different. And so they allow for food to be brought inside and then onto the train as well too. So that's kind of nice. There are some luggage limits, but I think most people, unless they're crazy with fish extenders, like sometimes can get, most
Yeah.
of your luggage limits, will meet most families' needs. You will need transportation to and from the stations. So if you are doing Port Canaveral, I would probably take an Uber there. We do have private transfers we can arrange as well too. It's about 40 minutes, so to speak, from the airport to the Port Canaveral, to the port. So just take that into consideration. That makes up for, and it's about the same. So it's 2 hours and 50 minutes from start to finish. But remember, you have to arrive a little bit early. So overall, time to time, the rental car versus Brightline is probably the same. But the Brightline is an awesome experience, way less stressful than driving into Fort Lauderdale.
Yeah.
And if you have any kids, I mean, talk about a fun experience is being on the train. And because you're going pretty fast and you stop and you see these different little areas and you're driving through these cities on this major train. So it's kind of a cool
Yeah.
experience.
I was gonna say, I feel like a lot of times people think of a train and they'll think of the New York subway where you're standing with your luggage and you're trying to hold the baby and you're kind of swaying back and forth. And I love the subway. It will always have a near and dear place in my heart. But this is a like a commuter train, right? There are seats and
You get assigned seats. Mhm.
yeah. So if you have questions on that, definitely reach out to Stacey. And we have a question from, I want to say, Scott. Is there any hotels in the area that partner with Disney for their transportation, like the Orlando Airport Hyatt to Port Canaveral? Oh, did I freeze? No, did I freeze?
Look at your hotel options as well too. And they do offer Disney transfers from a Disney hotel in Fort Lauderdale to the Disney cruise in Fort Lauderdale.
Love that. Thank you. Sorry about that. My internet went out there for a second. We're getting some storms rolling through. So thank you for that. And we will move on to Brightline train booking tips. So thank you for including this, because I know Brightline is something that can be very intimidating. Any sort of public transportation can be very intimidating to people who don't have experience with it.
Yeah, and happy. I'm also happy to help book your Brightline as well too. I book Brightline for my clients. Yep, and so,
Love that.
it's so even if you've already booked your cruise and you're starting to get overwhelmed with your hotel and Brightline experience, I can help book all of that and your rental cars as well. I'm a full service agency, book all of those for my clients. So, so we definitely want to, I recommend signing up for Brightline Plus, and you get some miles. And then you can book earlier for better rates. I liked adding the lounge access for extra comfort, but it is about $100 more per person. So just something to take into consideration. You do get premium seating. It's kind of the first class section of the train. You do get meals included on the train as well too. And then of course that priority boarding and priority lounge access. So that's definitely a great experience, was the premium experience.
Love that. And someone had asked, I think it was Eric asked, are there bathrooms on the train?
There are bathrooms on the train, yes.
Love that. And I know we get that question about the Disney Cruise Line buses, but there are bathrooms on those as well. So just keep that in mind. And someone's asking, can you take the train from Fort Lauderdale to Disney?
So you can take the train from Fort Lauderdale to the Orlando airport. That's the end of the line for the Brightline. So the Brightline goes from Orlando to Miami with about 6 stops along the way. One, of course, is Fort Lauderdale. And then so that ends in Miami and begins in Orlando airport, or vice versa. You can say it begins in Miami and ends in Orlando airport. So what we would need to do is, if you're going in that direction, then we would want for us to help you arrange transfers from Orlando Airport to Walt Disney World.
Yes, and Stacey can take care of all that. I know it sounds like a lot of moving puzzle pieces, but this is what she lives and breathes and loves doing. So let her help you with that coordination. But yeah, I think Brightline is a cool experience. I know it's something new, but it's great, right? There's a reason that Florida installed it, and it's got so many great reviews. I don't know anybody who's done it and not enjoyed it. I think, if you're comparing the two, Stacey, is there a reason why you would go with Brightline or rental for your family?
So I would say a lot depends on the timing between the two. And so if I'm a little bit more tight, I probably would just rent a car. And because of having to if you're going from Port Canaveral to Port Everglades, I would probably rent a car, mostly because of the transportation from Port Canaveral to MCO, and then the train, and then you got to take the transfer back. If you have if you're going the next day for a cruise, I would probably do the Brightline, just because I really enjoyed it. And if you are nervous drivers, around Fort Lauderdale can be pretty crazy, especially if you hit rush hour. It's not fun. I mean, it's kind of one of those things that you're just glad when you're done, when you're done with it, like, okay, we're parked, and so it's not that it takes a long time. It, can take anywhere from, 3 to 4 hours, closer to 3.5. So I always say leave, plan for 3.5 hours. But it's just that it's, so the Brightline is 2 hours and 15 minutes, and driving is 3.5 hours around there. So, but the transportation to the Brightline and then checking in and that all takes a bit. So.
Yes. And this is an interesting question. Somebody's asking, would you fly?
So that is actually one of the options. I don't know, just because if you've been to the Orlando airport lately, you have to arrive 2 hours early. And so so in that regard, I would probably just take the Brightline. And the
Yeah.
Brightline tickets are probably going to be a little less expensive than a flight anyway.
Yes, good to know. Okay. And then as far as getting the most out of your time actually in Florida, what are your tips here?
Yeah, so I think this is kind of where we say like the sky's the limit. So I don't want us to just think about Disney and a cruise or a cruise to a cruise. There's so much we could add to your adventure. So add a beach day. So if you're doing a side by side and it's ending in Florida and then starting the next day, I'm sorry, ending on a Friday and starting the next day on a Saturday, let's get you down to Fort Lauderdale and spend the day at the beach. Or if you're, going to be out of Port Canaveral, this picture is from the Hilton at Cocoa Beach, which I really
Ooh,
enjoyed my time there. So we could do that and then tie in Kennedy Space Center. So what I did on my last cruise on the Treasure, we ended up going to Legoland for a couple of days. And
so
so
cool.
yeah, so we rented a car, we went to Legoland, and then I returned the car back at the Orlando airport and then flew home from there. So again, other ways to maximize the fun. Let's head on to Universal Studios. Who doesn't want to go to the new Epic Universe? I'm just telling you,
It's so
it is
cool.
awesome. And we'll have a presentation just about that alone, just because that one is amazing. And so so there's so many things we could do to add on to your experience. And depending on kind of what you want to do, that would help me determine what kind of transportation do we need to get you to these different activities.
Yeah, and there's so many options, and I know we have our Disney blinders on sometimes, but there's so much to do in Florida. When you think about the nature, you think about the history. I mean, there's Disney, yes, there's the theme parks, yes, but there's so much. So depending on what your family wants to do, that's why have a conversation with Stacey. Let her get to know your family, and then she can make recommendations, because as a mom of three herself, she knows how to keep kids entertained, and how to do things keeping your budget in mind too, right? There's a lot of factors that go into planning the perfect vacation, and it's got to be perfect for your family.
Right,
Oh,
exactly. And
yes.
living in Florida, I've literally done all these things. I mean, so we've
Yes.
been to every water park we've been to, and with the new water park promo at Disney right now, if you book a night, you get a free day at water park upon check-in. So that's a lot of my clients are doing right now too, is just booking
Yes.
one night at the, Walt Disney World resort and then going to the water park the day of check-in. And then the next day they go to the cruise.
That's perfect. Oh my gosh, yes. I forget about all the promos that exist when it comes to the parks. The cruise line doesn't tend to see as many promos. So that is such a good point. And somebody asked, Henry's asking, would you recommend a private driver between the ports instead? I'm from the UK and not sure that I'd want to drive on American roads, which I get it. American roads I'm with you. I'm with you
Yes,
there.
we do have several private private transfer options that we use. And so that is definitely available to us. It's going to be a little bit more expensive than the rental of a car, of course, but sometimes what I find is that for my clients with bigger families, the private transfers end up being a little less expensive than, say, like Disney Cruise Line transfers. So I have a lot of my larger families will actually end up booking private transfers to all these different cruises.
Got it. Oh, that's so good to know. And let's see, there was another question. Would you recommend side to side or back to back? What are the perks?
So, I guess the pure definition of back to back is truly staying on the ship of the same ship. So a Wish 3 night to a Wish 4 night. Kind of the modified back to back, so to speak, is when you're getting off one and getting on another the same day. It would be a different ship, and so it really just depends on the the true back to back. You get to, if we book it early enough, you get to stay in the same stateroom, and you get to
Ooh,
leave your stuff. And you do still have to leave, and for clearance and customs. But then you're actually one of the first people back on the ship when it's time to board again. So that's the true back to back. I definitely recommend that if we are looking at people who want a little bit longer experience, but maybe aren't wanting to do the 7 night on the Treasure. So if you want to do, a 7 night cruise and have that cruise experience, let's look at a 3 and 4 night on the Wish. I do have a client that's doing a back to back this September, and it's a 4 and a 5 night. So she's like, 7 nights
ooh,
is not long enough. Let's get me
yeah.
some. So if you're looking for longer cruises, now if you're doing kind of that modified back to back or that side by side, which is going to be what they consider like a different ship, or the next day, the advantage is you get to go on more Disney, but you don't get the advantage of keeping the same stateroom because you're going to be in a different, cruise ship. But so you still have to go through the same check-in processes for both cruises. Online, you'll do it at your, when your Castaway number is up, when you do your online check-in. And then when you check in at the port, it will give you, you'll still have to check in the same for both of your different cruises. But so I guess the advantage really is that you get to, determine the number of nights that you have on a cruise, and you don't have to be limited by just what's being defined through Disney Cruise Line by having a 4 or 5 night cruise.
Yeah, it's so much more customizable. And especially as Disney is adding more of these 3, 4, 5 nights, it lets you mix and match. I mean, heck, there were days when, the Wish was in port and the Fantasy was coming in. I mean, I can't remember the last time before this where we were seeing Disney ships in port together so often. So it really lets you customize it and, find out which class of ships maybe is your favorite. And, as you get to go on more cruises and meet more of the crew moves around and you get to see some familiar faces across the fleet. But let's look at what an example of this back to back might look like.
Yeah. And so I ended up doing just a Walt Disney World, like a land and sea package, so to speak.
Love it.
And so mostly just trying to price this out just for people who have never been to Disney, and we all love our Disney cruises, but to add that extra experience. So ended up pricing out for shoot, I'm so sorry. It's supposed to be September 23rd to September 27th. So that is my error in printing here.
No
But it's
worries.
basically 4 nights at a Walt Disney World staying at Coronado Springs with a 3-day ticket with 1 park per day. We can talk about upgraded options, including having the 4 park per day. My recommendation is always trying to do 4 parks. That way you get to experience them all. But for a family of 4 and with 2 adults and 2 children, starting at just $35.75. So that's for a moderate resort. There are value resorts that are going to be less expensive. And this is also without the Disney promos that are applied yet, because they aren't available quite yet into those dates.
Ooh,
But one thing to note is that when a promo becomes available, working with me means that I will then retroactively go into your reservation and see if the promo is available, or if it allows for you to get an upgrade. Maybe it gets you an extra day at the park for the
ooh.
same price, or maybe instead of standing at a standard room, you're at a preferred location. So you're right by the buses and the food court. So the promos allow for me to usually give my clients some great upgraded experiences.
That's awesome. And the fact that you have that direct tie into Disney, because otherwise people don't know when these things are released and, they can't get that savings. I mean, heck, that savings could pay for extra meals or extra experiences at the park. So that is awesome that you do that for your clients.
Yeah. And just for everyone's, I'm an avid, I got married at Walt Disney World. So if you ever have any Walt Disney World questions, I'm happy to answer them. I grew up going to Disney since I was 2 years old and have been an annual pass holder since I was 14. So let's just say that Disney is in my blood.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes. Stacey is your girl when it comes not only to Disney cruising, but to the parks too. She has got you covered.
yeah, exactly. So then we would follow this with a 5 night Western Caribbean cruise from Fort Lauderdale with stops at Cozumel and Disney's Castaway. And this is the end of September and October. So would be a Halloween on the high seas, which, as you all know, I love. So family of
Yes.
4 starting at just $41.45 on the Disney Dream. Plus, I will give you free onboard credit. So some extra cash for you to spend on bingo and fun
Yes.
souvenirs. And so I priced out a couple of different transfers options. So a rental car from Walt Disney World to Fort Lauderdale is starting at $133. Now, of course, depending on the size of your family and how much luggage you have, it would go up from there. And the Brightline, there are less expensive earlier ones, but for the time that I would choose, which would be arrival like around 11 in the morning, as $276 for a family of 4. Now that is not the upgraded deluxe experience, but that does get you there on the Brightline. And then you would take a quick $20 Uber from the Brightline to the port. So you would be there by 11:15, 11:20. So that's a great option for those that want to transfer between the two. And of course, I do, as mentioned previously, have some private transfer options I can price out for you if that's something that you would be more interested in. These are usually kind of your black Cadillac Escalade, so they're really nice experiences. Or it might be some nice black car SUV that would take you there.
Love that. And a reminder here, Stacey's Planning Services, all that you see here, this is free help that she is giving as a part of her planning services. So utilize her to build this puzzle of your perfect vacation. And there's a question from Sandy asking, if I'm cruising from Port Canaveral and then want to do one of the side-by-sides from Fort Lauderdale, I think it would be cool. Would you recommend taking the Disney transfers to the airport and then doing Brightline?
Yeah, in that case, I would just take the DCO transfers to the airport. It's easier with the luggage, and then take the Brightline. But if you're going to do that, I definitely recommend that you walk off with your luggage. And so, I do love my breakfast in the morning, my, farewell breakfast with my dining team. But in this case, I would opt for choosing, getting off as early as possible, just to make sure we get you to your next cruise on time.
Yes. And if you are like, what the heck is walking off? What does that actually mean? That's why Stacey is here. She can prepare you for all parts of your trip so that you're not having a second guess. You know exactly where to go when you get off of the Disney transfer. You know where to go when you get off the Brightline train. She really is here to help and wants you to have the best vacation. And we also had a question. Is it true that Fort Lauderdale cruises are cheaper than Port Canaveral cruises?
In my pricing out, it depends on the ship. I think more than the port, but I do say in general, I've been pricing them out and they seem to be a little less expensive. And so as a general statement, I'd say yes, that let's look at Fort Lauderdale as being a port if you're trying to be budget conscious. But then at the same time, we could be pricing out a three night and it'd be similar in pricing. So it really just kind of depends on the pricing and the itinerary. The way the cruise pricing works is when they first release it, the price tends to go up pretty quickly because a whole bunch of people book at once. Then the price stabilizes for a bit. And then as we get closer and more people book the staterooms, the price is continuing. So price is continuing to go up. So just be aware that, it's still better to book earlier. And then, we can make modifications if need be, but you really do want to try to book as early as possible to get the best pricing. But if you have an opening now and you want to look last minute, I'd say let's definitely look at Fort Lauderdale. And right now there's some great, up to 25% off promos for summer cruises, which is not very common. A lot of times our summer promos tend to be in Alaska and Europe, but if you're still looking for like a 3 and 4 night and 5 night getaway in the Caribbean, there are some promos that are available and I'd be happy to price those out for you.
I was going to say, blows my mind that Disney has summer promos and not, from Florida ports. That is Amazing. So definitely, if you do not have a summer vacation planned and you want one, reach out to Stacey. I'm going to get the link to her page pulled back up for the DSL community site. But we have this question from Christopher. If we rent a car for a family of 5 to be able to go to the parks, should we plan to drop off the car at the port or return to the airport and take other transportation to the port?
Okay, so you are starting at the park. I would drop it off at the port. That I would personally take the rental car if you're comfortable with that. Just you'll probably end up saving some money doing it that way. I do have to say the the DCL transfers are fun though. So if you want to like, if you're not worried about saving the money and you want to start your experience, I do like the fact that, you start some of the check-in processes before you get on the transfer. The transfer is playing Disney movies. So you're kind of already starting your Disney cruise vacation when you're on the Disney Cruise Line transfer. So if you want more of the experience, I would say let's do the transfers. But if you're like, let's just get there, I'd probably just keep the rental car and drop it off at the port.
Yes, that definitely some good options there. It's just about what's best for you and your family. And I do have to say, I meant to mention this with the last question about the pricing between the ports. Fort Lauderdale is awesome. They did such a good job decorating it and making it Disney-fied. And I mean, just to your point, it is so close to the airport and the beach. And I'm a Port Canaveral girl. I love Port Canaveral. It will always have my heart. But Fort Lauderdale, it's winning out for me these days. It's just so
nice.
easy if you're flying in.
Yeah, it is. It's super nice. I just love the fact that the port is 15-20 minutes from the airport. So that's something to be said. And then the hotels are like right there. The preferred hotels through Disney. I mean, we're talking 10 minutes from the port. So it is really nice that it's all right there. So as I'm mentioning, the traffic was bad, but it was mostly just on your 95. And then, but once you get off in between the airport and the port and the port and the hotels, that's no more trafficy than really any other city. So that is not super scary. It's just I-95 is kind of a little intense around rush hour.
I just say I am in such awe of you right now because not only do you know about the cruise line, not only do you know about the parks, but you know about the traffic and the highways. Like you have got your clients covered.
Yeah.
Oh, that is awesome. Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, if you are ready to book your Disney vacation, your Disney cruise vacation, please reach out to Stacey. She is here to help. As you can tell, she loves this and she wants you to have the best vacation from start to finish, no matter what ports we start and finish in. And like we said in the beginning, her planning services are free for you to utilize. So reach out to her. That is the link to her page on the DCL community site up on screen. Stacey, thank you so much for hanging out with us tonight. This was a blast. I learned more. I need to do the Brightline. I admit I haven't done it yet, but every time I see it drive by, I'm like,
it's fun. It is a lot of fun.
Oh my gosh. I might just book a side by side just to do the Brightline.
Exactly, right?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, thank you so much again. And we will see all y'all on board real soon. Bye, guys.
Bye.